Can't hear you.
Yeah, I was muted intentionally. All right. Great. All right, good evening to folk who are tuning in on Facebook Live. We're going to ask that you would hit the share button and send this out. We'll give people a moment to log in. This is Power Live Free's Town Hall on violence prevention in the city of Philadelphia and beyond. We have a very important conversation scheduled for tonight. And again, we certainly would like for you to bring others into this conversation. We want it to be interactive. And so this evening, we will also have time to take your questions from Facebook and share them with the persons who are going to present this evening. So just about a minute or so, we will start. So again, hit the share button if you can. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler, pastor of Mother Bethel AME Church and one of the co-directors of Power Live Free. And this evening, we welcome you to what is the beginning of a series of very important town hall conversations that we'll hold monthly in this space. And this will be a rotating conversation around the multiple issues that our Power Live Free team is working on, all broadly related to criminal justice reform. This evening, I want to introduce my fellow co-director, Elder Melanie DeBose, who is calling through on the phone, and I'd like for her to introduce herself and also tell you a little bit about Power Live Free. Elder DeBose.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for just allowing us to share this space and time. And again, if you remember to push that share button, invite your friends to come on in and listen. And certainly if you have anything that you want to interject, we will give you space and time to do that. Again, I'm Elder Melanie DeBose, and I'm one of the founding congregations of Power Live Free. I'm pastor of Power. I pastor Evangel Chapel in the North Philadelphia community. And Dr. Mark Tyler and I are co-directors of the Live Free component of Power. Power is the largest social justice movement in the northeastern region of our nation, and we're proud that Live Free is the criminal justice reform component of that. As Live Free, we have several components that we operate under. Certainly, we address the issues of gun violence. We address the issues of police reform, and we're certainly looking at the issues of mass incarceration, particularly as it pertains to the incarcerated spaces that are occupied by Black and brown people. And lastly, we take a look at immigration and how it is a tool. It weaponizes people of color. So there are a lot of activities, and we invite you to look at our website, powerinterfaith.org. Invite you to look at that because there are a number of other components of the Power Interfaith movement that we would love to invite you to have conversations about and certainly join. So look at our website, look at our Facebook page, and if you want further conversation, there are a number of us who can be contacted through that medium. Blessings.
Thank you, Elder DeBose. Tonight, Power Live Free, like all of our Power movement, because it is a faith-based organizing effort, is always cautious to begin our work in a faith grounding. And we represent multiple faith traditions. And tonight, we have speaking to us in a faith reflection from his own tradition. I'll let him tell you what that is, the Reverend Art Brown, who helps to lead our mass incarceration table. Reverend Brown, you have the floor, sir.
In the sacred scriptures of Jeremiah and Ezekiel, the rulers and the holy officials of their time cried, peace, peace, but there was no peace for the common person. The gun violence perpetrated on one by another, both persons having the same skin tone, seems to be without reason. Some of us believe that these unspeakable actions may stem from feelings of self-hate among Black youth. This gun violence has devastated the Black community and it borders on acts of self-genocide. For more than 50 years, this self-imposed genocide has become a way of life for too many of us in the Black community who are eking out a day-to-day survival. Already 121 homicides this year, a 3% increase over the same time in 2021, where we had 560 homicides and in 499 homicides in 2020. Among our Black youth, these violent actions have taken on a code of manhood, a rite of passage, a coat of armor, if you will. How do we in the Black community get rid of or dismantle this code of self-violence, this code of self-destruction, this code of self-genocide? We are here this evening to take an approach of the town hall meeting as an antidote, as a remedy. This healing remedy is expressed through a song which is sung in the historical Black church as follows: there is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. This town hall meeting is our effort to heal and to establish peace in the Black community where there is no peace. They cried peace, peace, but there was no peace. This evening, let us enter into these discussions with a determined mind and an open heart to establish peace. Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, Reverend Art Brown, for that wonderful faith reflection on tonight and getting us started. This evening, as we continue, we often say within Power, and I'm appreciative of our Executive Director, Bishop Dwayne Royster, who's in the Zoom room, we'll hear from this evening before we close out, that we never want to stray too far away from people who are living closest to the pain. And with that in mind, tonight, before we hear from the experts, and we certainly have some expert voices on this evening to talk about violence prevention, we want to hear from someone who doesn't have the luxury to think about whether or not to be in this space. She's here because of her pain, and I'm so grateful to her agreeing to be here on tonight to share it. I want to thank the Amir Center for connecting us, Mrs. Victoria Green, who's also in the Zoom room, that we may hear from as well later on this evening. But right now, we want to hear from Irma Gardner Hammond, and she's going to introduce to us her beloved son, Eric, and his story. Mrs. Hammond, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here and to share my story. I'm starting off with a little reading that kind of explains a prelogue to what happened. You know, there is a river that runs through Philadelphia. It gets deeper and wider every day. It is not pretty. Nobody fishes in it. Nobody swims in it. Some people act like it's not even there. It is murky and dark and bloody. It's a river that we don't like to look at. It is colored by the tears and the sweat and the blood shed from loved ones that are lost. Everyone cries for those who have been murdered. Sometimes we don't know how to go on. We will never, ever be the same. We cling close to one another, bonded by feelings that we just can't express openly. How can you express something that you thought would never happen to you? Something that you never expected to enter and interrupt your life. The river is overflowing. The river is overflowing. The river is overflowing. Stop the gun violence now. And that's kind of how I feel. Gun violence touches everyone. And it touched me when I lost my beloved son, Eric Hammond. Eric Dorsey Hammond. He was 28, full of life, ready to live, ready to do great things. He had just gotten home from work. And he said, well, I'm going to go out to Broad Alney and pick up my girlfriend something. She wanted chicken or something. So shortly after he left, we got a call that he had been shot. And the girlfriend and I ran to Einstein Hospital where they took him. This was April the 28th. They took him there, and no, you just don't know what reaction you're going to have. You know, I think about the mothers who get the news, either the son has been shot or your son is dead or whatever. You just don't know that feeling. Some people cry. Some people fall out. Some people don't have words. They just say, oh, no. Some people just wail. That reaction is something that you'll never, ever forget. Never forget. I guess I can say I was fortunate that Eric lived 7 days afterward. But this didn't have to be. His life was interrupted. He was a person that loved life. He loved to dance. He loved to sing. He was into drama. He did things in the theater. He loved people and music and all things that were good. I'm not saying he was a saint, but he was a young man trying to get ready for life. Trying to get ready for life. Life that was snatched away from him so suddenly. Was snatched away from me. You know, the feelings, like at Amir, every murder is real. We get to express those feelings to one another. Everybody that's in it, we didn't choose to be in it. You know, it's an exclusive place to be because somebody has to help us with that grief. It's a grief that you'll never, ever forget. Eric was kind of boy, he said that he wanted to just work with his hands. He did construction work sometimes. And his dream was to wear Paul Bunyan shirts, build a house in the woods, and live off the land. You know, everybody thought that was a peculiar thing, but he really meant it. He wanted to get a truck, you know, and he just enjoyed life. He influenced a lot of people's life. One time he had a job as a canvasser where he was selling people or getting subscriptions from people for things like the Heifer Association, the Feed the Children, ACLU, and he was good at it because, you know, when those people come to you in the street, you usually say, oh, that's the pest and get away. But he had such a gift that he was able to do that kind of work. And when I see letters that I get now, to him from people who have who joined up and who are feeding the children and who are doing the cleft lips and who are, and I can say, well, my son, Eric contributed to that. A lot of people are eating now. It's been almost 3 years. A lot of people in foreign countries are eating now, and even Planned Parenthood he worked for because of my son. I get so angry, and I'm sure that people like me share that anger. I get angry when I see other young men walking down the street with their families, and they're joyous, and they haven't done anything to me, but I'm just mad because Eric will never walk down the aisle. Eric will never give me grandchildren. Eric will never have that house in the woods with the Paul Bunyan shirt. He won't do any more artwork, and I should have brought some of his art. He loved to draw and paint. Sometimes he and his friends would go down in front of in Logan Square, and they would sell their paintings and their artwork and play music and do what young people do, and just have a nice time. They'd make money on their art. They'd get $5 for a picture, and they thought they had done something, but it was what they wanted to do. They'll never get to do that again. And when I see other people joyous, it breaks my heart, because I said, my child should be here. He's a very, very special child. I was 46 when I had him. There's 20 some years between he and his sister. When I went to the doctor and I thought I was changing life, doctor told me, "No, Miss Hammond, you're going to be changing diapers." I said, "What?" I was so surprised. But that's why I say, I know he is a blessing. He's been a blessing to so many people. There's not a thing you could ask him to do that he wouldn't do it. We saw that picture flash by. That was his one of his best friends. And he told the story where he had given Eric a jacket because it was cold outside. When he looked around, Eric had given his jacket to somebody else that was colder than him, and his hat. That's the kind of person he was, a very loving, giving, energetic person, So when he got shot, it changed my whole world. Changed my whole world, because I thought I had lost him on April the 28th. And he was giving me May 4th. They told me that he was going to be going to Moss Rehab. He was back on his feet. He was breathing and talking. And on May 5th, I got a call that he had a blood clot. Come to the hospital right away, so that they could do it. And I got to the hospital, and my church was having chamber prayer for him. And I'm sitting there waiting, and I hear Code Blue. And automatically I knew that was Eric. He had a blood clot, and they couldn't get it out. And he passed from that, It was like unreal, It was really unreal. And so we know that when we lose someone, it's just not us that's affected. I felt like the whole world was affected. But I know that communities are affected. The people that he went to school with, like his whole school showed up at his homegoing. The people that did drumming with him were there to do drumming for him. The storytelling group that he belonged to since he was a little boy, we call them Watoto of Joy, because they are part of Keepers of the Culture, a group that I belong to. He grew up in that group, and all of them were, devastated. People that he had worked with. He used to go down to Kensington and pass out toiletries and coffee and things that people on the street needed. Yeah, because he was doing construction work down there, and he saw what was going on. We know how Kensington is. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of anything. Anything he tried to do, he tackled it and did it with his whole heart if he believed in it. He was a young man of courage. He was a young man who could have made a bigger difference, I think, in the world. But he never got a chance, because we have this people that are gun violence crazy. I don't know why, and I don't know the answers. I just get frustrated, because the only thing we can do now is find the person that did it, get them off the streets, and so that nobody else will have to cry, so that nobody else will feel what I felt, so that nobody else will lose another child. Do you know that some people have lost 2 or 3 children to gun violence? And those families are affected. By being in a mirror, I can see, like, sometimes a husband is murdered. Well, his family no longer has a breadwinner. His family sometimes has to move, and they need help with that moving. You know, the children are traumatized. They need counseling. It stretches far and wide. You know, sometimes somebody was taking care of somebody and they get shot because it's so sudden. It's not like when somebody's sick and you know that they might be making their transition, but somebody go to the store to get a chicken or a pack of cigarettes and never come home. That's a devastating thing, very devastating. It affects the workplace. It affects everything. It affects the future, because there's no future after he's gone. He doesn't have a future. And sometimes, just to share the feelings with you, sometimes, you're thinking, you say, well, why is she acting so funny? Or what's wrong with her? Some people have to still work, their life doesn't stop. And they might be thinking, he's gone. I'm never going to see him again. And they might just bust out crying. And you wonder, what's wrong with her? The reality sinks in daily. There's not a day go by that I don't think of my Eric. Every day, the thought never leaves. And some people will say things to you that are cliche-ish and you think it's really dumb, but you have to go along with it because you don't want to just be totally wrong. They'll say, oh, 3 years? You should be over that by now. How to tell you what you're going to be over? That makes you angry too. We have a lot of tears and anger at people. How can somebody tell you when it's over? You can't do that. Your feelings last for a long time. You have ebbs and you have falls, but it's always going to be there. You learn to live with it. You learn to work through it. I think one of my missions is to tell the story because I feel like it's not an epidemic to other people unless it happens to them. I think in the city of Philadelphia, as elsewhere, people have just gotten numb. Oh, another person got killed today. Okay, pass me this bread or whatever. It's not shocking. We've just become so used to it. It's just another thing to go on. And until people start to feel it, realize it, or know it, I don't think it's going to stop. We have to stop it somewhere. I don't have the answers, but I know I'm going on and on. Maybe somebody has a question or wants to talk about another part of this, but I'm open for that. But I'm just thinking we've got to stop the gun violence now.
Yes. Miss Irma, we thank you so much. This is Elder Melanie DeBose, and we've spoken before.
Yes.
And we thank you so much for your courage and for the passion and just for having the strength in this moment to share Eric with us. We
Yes.
honor you for just the courage to get your story out and to give us the information, the ability, the fortitude to continue to stand with you and other families who have such a devastating loss. We hope and we pray that tonight for all of us will make a difference. And we hope also that as Mark Tyler and I have shared with you before, that even as you're with Emir, you recognize that Power Live Free is lifting you up as well. And we're holding up your arms and we're standing with you in prayer and in solidarity because we agree the gun violence has to stop. If you hang on, there may be some questions for you down the line, but we're going to move into the next aspect of our conversation. Thank you again, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. And I did get a chance to share the picture of Eric, so I hope that if you missed that, you can, when you go back and replay this, you'll be able to see that wonderful young man and all of the light that you heard bubbling through in the picture. Tonight, this is really why it's so important. And I know that we even have some media who are watching this on this evening. You know, often we talk about these stories from a perspective that's important, policy and what needs to happen. But if it's devoid of these real stories, then somehow it's missing something. And so thank you for grounding us. And I think it's a very important segue into the conversation that we want to have with Keelan Henderson, who we're about to bring on now. Keelan I just want to read a little bit about his background, because I think it's important that we know exactly who we have the benefit of hearing from this evening. He is the Violence Reduction Program Manager at the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. There he coordinates and manages the communication, technical assistance, and training for jurisdictions that NICJR is supporting to develop gun violence reduction strategies. This includes supporting the cities that are members of the National Offices of Violence Prevention. He also conducts ongoing research and writes reports on gun violence reduction. Prior to joining NICJR, Keelan worked as the Community Engagement Coordinator for the City of Stockton, California, their Office of Violence Prevention, where he played a crucial role in implementing a citywide violence reduction strategy. He also served as a violence interrupter and outreach supervisor, supervising a team of life coaches and case managers. Prior to OVP, he worked as the executive director for the Reno Tahoe Young Professionals Network with Faith-Based Solutions, working for over 10 years in nonprofit management, business development, and community outreach. We have a person who knows intimately, unfortunately, far too many of those same stories that we've just heard, stories like Eric's. And so, Keelan, as we bring you on, maybe we could start with this question pulled from the faith reflection from Reverend Art Brown earlier, where he sung, "There is a balm in Gilead." Before the enslaved in this country made that with an exclamation mark. In the Hebrew Bible, the prophet asked the question, is there a balm in Gilead? Is there no balm in Gilead? And as we look at gun violence in our country and in our cities today, is there a balm? Is there a cure? And if so, talk to us about what that looks like.
Wow. Good evening to all. Certainly appreciate this opportunity to speak on behalf of the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. Let me say greetings to the clergy on this call, to the elders, to the mother, and to Sister Irma. I certainly appreciate you for sharing the life of your son, Eric. Certainly saddened by your loss and every other soul that we lose due to gun violence. But I appreciate you for sharing the other side of that story, which is the life that he did live. Certainly appreciated that. Again, thank you for this opportunity. And by the way, excuse me, and to city officials as well. I see Erica Atwood on the call and Martise. Nice seeing you guys as well. Is there a bomb in Gilead? That's such a, I think, timely question, given at the height of the pandemic started in 2020, even going into 2021, we've seen an uptick of gun violence and incidents across the country in most metropolitan cities, and even in other cities that were not known to have a lot of gun violence. We certainly saw homicides and non-fatal injury shootings increasing in those cities as well. It is a very serious issue, and it has been for a very long time. If you ask me if there's a bomb and what that bomb would be, I would absolutely say yes, there is one. And to me, that bomb would be solutions, the current solutions that we know that work. I've been doing this work, not necessarily a long time, but I have certainly some skin in the game. There are, really some fundamental concepts and principles that we know that work in reducing gun violence. And by reducing gun violence, we're talking about in the near future. There are certainly a lot of different examples of programs that to some degree will eventually help to reduce gun violence. But when I say reducing gun violence, I am talking about the near future, which for us and for me looks like between the months of 12 to 18 months, there should be at least some type of significant impact in reducing violence in various cities and jurisdictions across the country. Some of the things I will lift up initially as we get into this conversation include, really 4 effective strategies that we know that work. One is a hospital-based violence intervention program, where you have individuals as hospital employees, staff, or volunteers, or you have outside organizations that partner with local hospitals to where if an individual is shot, that a life coach and or case manager is able to meet with this individual within this, what we call golden hour, or small frame of time where they can actually engage with this individual to build relationship so as to reduce the likelihood of re-victimization. It is the point at which an individual who may have previously lived the life that this high-risk individual is living can speak to, can encourage and motivate this individual to change their life, or try to encourage this individual not to respond to the incident or act of violence with another act of violence to prevent retaliation. And then, of course, match or pair this person up with services and supports that he or she may need. Another one that I would like to lift up includes street outreach. We know that there are many organizations across the country that have been doing this work a very long time that use, again, the individuals with previous lived experience, or also known as credible messengers, to engage with individuals who are considered high risk, whether that is in a hotspot location or area of town, whether that is at a concert that high likelihood of violence to occur. Wherever the location is, these street outreach workers go out into the community and they engage with these individuals. Again, first and foremost, to build relationship. After building relationship, the goal is to build trust and rapport with this individual. And we take that trust and we hope to gain influence in order to encourage this person to make better decisions. That is something that we know that works. When you're asking someone to change their life, they must see it in someone else. You have to show them by being an example of what could happen. In other words, you have to provide hope. And, with so many clergy on the call today, I know we all know what hope is. Hope is this sort of this feeling, this notion, this idea that things, circumstances can change. And a lot of times we're dealing with individuals who do not feel like they have hope. And so the goal of street outreach workers is to inspire hope. Another effective strategy that we know that works, one that is being performed across the country by an organization called Advance Peace. But it is this idea of having a cohort or fellowship of high-risk individuals where you are actively working with them on a day-to-day basis, where you are providing intensive case management, which looks like 2 to 3 in-person contacts per week. But you are also exposing these individuals to a different type of lifestyle, more pro-social lifestyle, excursions, getting them out from the block, neighborhood, city, jurisdiction that they were born and raised in or primarily reside in, and allow them to see something else and put their eyes on a different thing. We know that works. And the last thing that I would like to lift up is this gun violence reduction strategy, which is a strategy that is preferably citywide, a citywide strategy where you have multiple agencies and partners working together that include street outreach folks. It includes fellowships or cohorts of very high-risk individuals going through the process to change their life. It also includes what we lifted up, like the hospital-based intervention work, all of these bits and pieces of the ecosystem working together around a shared common goal and strategy. And those are 4 effective strategies that I want to lift up, things that we know that work. And so again, if I had a bomb, it would be solutions that we know work.
So Keelan, that's really powerful, and thank you for that. The last one of those things that you mentioned, the city, a citywide strategy around gun violence. I think a part of the reason that Power Live Free wanted to have this conversation is it feels like the challenge with that in Philadelphia is our greatest strength, which is we have very strong neighborhoods and very strong, blocks. But very often, I know we had this conversation before. I think you used a different term. I would say siloed. I think you had a different way of kind of thinking about that. But how do we get a citywide approach in a city that has a difficult time doing anything that's citywide when it comes to these types of issues? A lot of people doing very good work. In fact, I just want to recognize there are a number of folks, thanks to Erica Atwood sending the word out today. We have folk listening, member of a citizens group of the men's group of firms in the city, Fellowship of Women Clergy. We've got FIT-C Men's Group, Task Force, Malcolm X Crime Prevention Institute. There's one of the participatory defense hubs listening. So there's a lot of folks doing it, but how do we, have you had this challenge before in other cities across the country, and how have they dealt with it?
Yeah, well, let me just say that we are actively working with the city of Philadelphia. We are working with my colleague Erica Atwood and folks at the city. We have partnered with the Philadelphia Foundation, William Penn Foundation, to do a gun violence assessment, an initial assessment on gun violence there, which looks at the past 2 years of homicide incidents and 1 year of non-fatal injury shooting incidents, and also be doing a full, what we call gun violence problem analysis, where we take a more sort of in-depth analysis and look at those incidents and the facts around those incidents in order to determine and come up with risk factors so that we know, in fact, who the very high risk individuals are. So I just want to lay out our current partnership with the city of Philadelphia, and Reverend Tyler, I can't speak to what can or cannot happen in the city of Philadelphia. I think the city of Philadelphia is doing great work. You guys, with the situation and the challenges that you guys have been faced with, I think the city is doing phenomenal. And I also think that there are a number of organizations in the city out there, boots on the ground, working with the folks that need to or are in a position to receive services. I just want to lay that out there. I think when you look at the work as a whole, and by the way, we are working with the White House Community Violence Intervention Collaborative Initiative that identified 16 jurisdictions across the country where we're actively working with community violence intervention organizations, Philadelphia being one. And when I look at those other cities and jurisdictions, some of the common sort of themes that I see include an opportunity for organizations, individuals, stakeholders to come together on a regular basis and share a space where information is being provided, best practices is being discussed, gaps in services is being identified. There is opportunity, I think, for all of us in whatever city we're working in to share that space, especially when you consider this work in terms of it being institutionalized, relatively recently, right? Like, I'm not saying that this is new work at all. Like, there have been people that have been doing this work for years, right? But in terms of it being institutionalized, in terms of these cities across the nations who are opening up Office of Violence Preventions and Office of Neighborhood Safeties and Office of Violence Reductions, it's fairly new. And so I think it's high time. I think it's a great opportunity to come together on a regular basis to talk about, right, things like what are the funding opportunities that are available? Things like how do we define street outreach, and are we speaking the same language, right? What is violence interruption or violence reduction work? What is intervention versus prevention, right? I think that I don't think we can assume that we all have this common understanding of these terms, right? But if we identify spaces for where this conversation is happening, I think then the language begins to sort of spread from one person, one agency, one city to another. And that, I think, is something that we all can implement. Or strengthen.
Thank you, Keelan.
That's already happening.
Thank you, Keelan. And that, what you just shared is so vitally important. And this is Elder Melanie DuBose again. And what you shared lends itself to the question that I have. And we know that this solution is not going to come in the form of, pardon the pun, silver bullet, but we know that we have a lot of work to do before us. We're also aware of the fact that there are a number of groups, as has been mentioned by my co-director, Mark Tyler. So I want you to elaborate, if you will, a little bit more. A number of groups out of Philadelphia who are working in their individual areas of the city and the neighborhoods, and they're doing a yeoman's job of trying to get control of their community. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been in getting groups across the nation to do more collaboration rather than competition? You lifted up the reality that there are funds available, but give us an example, if you will, of what it would look like for these individual groups across the city of Philadelphia to work in collaboration rather than in competition.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. What I can answer, or how I can answer that, and what I could speak to, is two things. One, let me just really sort of clarify the work that we are doing with individual community violence intervention organizations in the city of Philadelphia. Under the House initiative that I just mentioned, we named, by the assistance and help of the city of Philadelphia folks, 3 organizations that we are actively working with to help support and build capacity so that they are in a better position infrastructure-wise to be able to apply for the funds that are soon to be available, right? And I'm talking about local, state, and federal dollars, right? So that is the initiative under the White House, is to support, to build capacity among selected CVI organizations to prep them for funding, right? What I can speak to in terms of an example of what collaboration can look like would be what I implemented in my own city of Stockton, California, Northern California, right? Almost clearly across the entire country. Something as simple as this, right? You know, as a community engagement coordinator, I realized that you're dealing with these organizations. We're all busy, and we're all trying to meet the goal of reducing violence, right? We all have the right motive to do this work. But as mentioned before, sometimes we're just not talking to each other, and that poses a problem when clients need to be serviced, when clients need to be prioritized. And so, you know, I put something together. We called it the Frontline Mixer, but it was more than just a mixer. But the idea was that individuals that are on the front line have a space that they come together every single quarter. I mean, the goal was to get up to a monthly meeting. We didn't get that far, but we had a quarterly meeting where, again, frontline folks came together and talked. Now, of course, we made it fun, right? We had food. I mean, you know, it was, you know, really good relationship building, all of that. But the idea was, let's build relationship among each other first before we ask a very high-risk individual to build relationship than with us, right? Let's strengthen what we currently have first so that we can make sure that what we offer is something that we know will work, right? And so that was the goal. I think a lot of times and I'm not, trying to preach here, but sometimes, it just happens when you're among a lot of preachers. But, you just can't help yourself. We preach on relationship building. Anybody who's in the work of community violence intervention and violence reduction knows that it's all about relationship, right? And we preach on that so much, but oftentimes we forget to build relationship amongst each other. Build relationship amongst stakeholders, amongst the folks that clock in and out, that are in offices every day, that are just, tugging away, trying to get the work done. We forget that it takes relationship building in order to identify, first of all, not just what we're doing well, but areas that we can improve upon, right? We have to be real and transparent and candid with one another about those things. And so I created that space, the Frontline Mixer, to do just that. Another example is what I call, brace yourselves, a lot of people chuckle when they hear this, but we called it Data and Donuts, right? Data and Donuts was another quarterly meeting where we invited community folk, where we invited folks who may not be in the work, but they are certainly affected by the work, right? Folks that we all want public safety, right? We all want to be safe in or outside our dwelling. And so we have a responsibility to communicate the work that's happening. But we have to identify spaces for that to happen. And we also have to identify the ways in which that should happen, right? And so we created this space called Data and Donuts, where quarterly we came together, invited community folks, and we put it on Zoom and Teams and Facebook Live, and we just talked about the ongoing work that was happening in the city. And I think those are two examples of not necessarily what the city of Philadelphia should and could implement, but something that I think all cities across the nation can look at and say, this may be something that we consider, look into, and maybe even alter if they do sort of consider having some type of community and shared space. Here's an example of a city that has done it, and an example of something that has actually worked. I mean, I've been gone from the city for about a year now, and as of now, it is still up and running. So
there you go.
Thank you so much, Keelan. That's just some awesome information, and I personally really like the data and the donuts. I want to say to the groups that are listening, the community groups, first of all, we thank you for your interest, and we thank you for your participation in this conversation. We want to invite you, and our technical person may have already put it in the chat by now, but we want to invite you to answer a question, because our overarching objective is to really pull everyone together who we know individually that we have a heart for this work and a desire to see a cessation in the gun violence. So we're looking to pull our individual groups so that we can have that collective conversation that Keelan alluded to. So in the chat, if the question is not there yet, we're going to be asking you to identify what you believe is, as your group, what you believe to be your real area of strength as you attempt to combat the issues of gun violence in your individualized community. Thank you for already putting in information about your location and the names of your organization and your contact information. But we want to know, what is the strength? What do you do well in terms of combating? Because as we continue these conversations, that's going to make a difference in helping us to understand how we can accomplish our overarching goal of collaboration instead of competition.
Thank you, Elder Melanie. And Selena Singleton has already put it in the chat, and she's also put in the chat earlier for persons to put where they are from. So, and let me just do this. We're going to go to Erica Atwood from the city in just a moment. And when after we've heard from her, we're going to wrap up with Bishop Dwayne Royster. But just before you come on, Erica, let's actually ask that question of someone who is in the chat. What part of combating gun violence does your group address most effectively? Victoria Green is here, and she is the founder of EMIR, Every Murder is Real. And Keelan, that acronym comes from the name of her son, who was killed, and she tells that story quite a bit, whose name was Amir. And so Miss Vicki is no stranger to anybody in Philadelphia working in this space. But Miss Vicki, maybe we have assumptions about what you all do well, but what would you say EMIR does effectively and most effectively in this area? You're still muted too, Mrs. Vicki. Let me try to get you unmuted. There you are. Try to get you unmuted. There you are. You're there.
Okay, great. What I know that we do effectively is trauma-informed education and support systems. We have support groups for everyone, for the mothers, fathers, young people, teenagers, and each one has their own individual group, which is very effective because there may be things that a son may not want to share to the mother, and the mother may not want to cry in front of the children. So that's why we do that, and it's very effective. We also work with a group called Men of Germantown, and they do street work. So they refer people to us, which is very effective. We also have talked to young men who want to retaliate. We have prevented quite a few retaliations, going to mothers' homes where their son was murdered and the son's friends are there and they're very angry and they want to retaliate. We talk to them. So those are the things we're really good at. We're good at community relationships. People in the community refer people to us. So I think that is really our strong point. And we have a new program, a relocation program, where some people don't want to stay in their home. The home may be the site of the murder, and they just can't stay there anymore. So that's just a little bit and a lot of what we do. And it's very effective and really needed. It's really needed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I'm sure people tell you all the time, but let me just say again publicly how much we appreciate you and the work of EMIR. I've tried to reach out to Shantae a couple of times through the pandemic as I've seen the numbers spike, and I can only imagine what it must be for you all to carry that and to have so many more families. We don't often think about the folk who are doing that work, so we're praying for you as well. And another person who is in this work each and every day here in the city, who is really doing a good job at being able to now not only advocate for dollars to go to grassroots organizations, but we're starting to see that happen. And so we're glad to have with us Erica Atwood, Senior Director, Office of Policy and Strategic Initiatives for Criminal Justice and Public Safety here in the city of Philadelphia. Erica, good evening, and I'm sure that this has stirred up quite a bit in you based on what we've heard thus far.
Yeah, good evening and greetings, family. It is a pleasure to be here. There are a lot of familiar faces, a lot of familiar names, and it is blessed to spend my evening with you all to have what is a really important conversation, and would love to kind of just dive deep into maybe questions you have or give you a little insight on what the city strategy has been and what the impacts of the last 2 years have been on the body of work.
So Erica,
Yeah.
how are you understanding, let me just ask you a different way. So I kind of described it as our strong neighborhoods can sometimes hurt us in Philly when it comes to trying to coordinate. I mean, like, there could be a shooting on literally in one block on the same street, but because it's a different numbered block, 2 blocks over, where you actually have a strong group, maybe there's like zero communication about it, as though it's like, that's not our problem. It's, you know, sometimes that's kind of hard to fathom. Do you kind of see it in the same way? And what kind of thoughts do you have? I kind of like some of the stuff David threw out. I'm going to be proposing to you all frontline First Fridays. So we get everybody together. I like that idea, just, you know, bringing folk together. But yeah, how are you kind of seeing this moment?
Yeah, I'm seeing this moment. Gun violence is a deadly symptom of systemic divestment, particularly from Black and Brown communities across this country, particularly Black communities in Philadelphia. And we have to play a long and short game of this work. And the short game is the triage and the removing of guns and the removing of imminent danger and harm in our communities. And the long game is economic mobility, quality education, access to health supports, reconnective tissue, and rebuilding our villages and our neighborhoods. I think one of, to your point, Reverend Tyler, one of the blessings of Philadelphia is we are a patchwork quilt. So we are that coat of many colors, and the beauty and the personality that lies within our neighborhoods exist. But it also means that we don't blend together well. We're just kind of stitched block by block. And that stitching oftentimes doesn't get crossed in ways that are effective, supportive, and communal. In ways that we need to be in order to get to the hope that we all have that needs to flourish and thrive in our neighborhoods. I think that some of what Keelan said around kind of the 4 proven ways, and some years ago, his principal at his organization wrote a paper on the 4 proven ways, and what he listed is included. And I will say, we as Philadelphia have a number of those that are already stood up, and where we've got kind of all the parts and parcels, but it's about building an ecosystem, and a sustainable ecosystem that isn't reliant on who sits in City Hall. I jokingly say to folks, I'm like the cat that you fed that keeps coming back. And so I have multiple iterations of my career in this work in the city from a local or a national level. I'm rooted in purpose in this work. And so I'm always going to be around, but I may not sit in this seat. And what does it mean to create a thriving collective ecosystem that a mayor has to step into and doesn't set? And I think that is one of the key things we have to start thinking about, is that, and this may be controversial when I say it, but the city has been one, and I don't mean now, I don't mean this administration, I mean historically. Historically, the city or governments have sometimes been agents of harm. And I think that we have to recognize that, accept that. I own that. And I sit in this place as someone who has to hold space and hold a line for folks that look like me, so I can do the hard work of holding the line so we don't regress, so we continue to move forward and continue to support those of you who are sitting at this virtual table that are doing good work. And when we hold that line in a place that has been historically oppressive for Black folk, and I'm going to speak from the narrative, what I know and what I understand, what my experience has been. And not to marginalize or ostracize anybody else that doesn't look like me, but I'm going to speak in I statements this evening. And when I think about the role that government should play, we have restitution to make. But the city has a responsibility to making sure that we are not being barriers to healing in our communities. We have a responsibility to make sure that we are removing the actual instruments of harm from our communities. in our responsibility for restitution, that is what the work that you mentioned, Reverend Tyler, that I'm trying to create is the grant programs that we have. And it's not just about what the city should be doing, but we're also setting example for the philanthropic sector that will no longer have excuses as to why they don't fund grassroots POC-led organizations. Because if the city and all our bureaucracy can figure it out, so can the foundation. And so there's a lot of work that can be done. I think there are a lot of opportunities that exist. I think, again, it's about building that ecosystem, is setting the table that can live above and beyond 8 years. I think that the city will continue to invest in this work until we get it right, which might be in perpetuity. I would say this administration and being in this work, and for those of you who are not familiar with kind of my history, I've worked not only in this administration, but the last. We have made in this administration historical investments in community-based organizations that have never happened before. And that should continue to happen. And we're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out. We sometimes are a pain in the behind, and I know it, but we're trying, and we will continue to try.
That's wow. Yeah, I think so. What I think I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we need a plan that is, and again, this is not a knock against the current mayor, the future mayor, or any past mayors, but we need one that is mayor proof, that rolls on its own. It is city council proof. It gets a life of its own, and just, is that a fair way to kind of describe it?
That is a very way of saying it, and the city can help set it, but it should be centered in impacted communities.
Yeah. This is an incredible conversation. You know, one of the things we asked the question of other groups in the Facebook live chat, what do they do well? I think one of the things that Power Live Free does well is we have an extensive network outside of the city of Philadelphia. You know, to be able to reach Keelan, for example, through David Muhammad, through relationships with Pastor Mike McBride, who founded Live Free, and all the other different kind of things that, you know, we have access to. For us, we feel that a part of what we can offer in this moment is at least bringing some of those voices in ways that kind of supports the work that's already being done by your office, the work that's being done by places like EMIR and others. And in the spirit of what Elder Melanie said, not competition, but cooperation. Again, what does it look like to have that quarterly table that Keelan mentioned, whether we call it Data and Donuts or, you know, Frontline Fellowship or whatever it is, but to be able to do that. And so this is a first attempt at that. And I know that we're going to do this on a regular basis each month around our other topics, mass incarceration, as well as police accountability and immigration issues as well. So, but this will not be the only type of space to have these kind of conversations for us. Before we go to Bishop Royster, I just wanted to make sure that we have a number of people in the chat who are inside the Zoom room. Some of them, I think, are with your staff. Some are with Live Free. If there's anyone who had a question or a comment before we go to Bishop Royster, want to be able to give you an opportunity to have that moment now. All right. Seeing no hands pop up. I want us to go to Bishop Dwayne Royster, who is the Executive Director of Power Interfaith, and help us to understand the larger connection. Like I saw some of the folk from Power's education campaign who are in here tonight listening, and I would imagine from our other tables as well. But Bishop Royster, how does what you heard tonight speak to all of the different ways in which Power Interfaith is moving?
Thank you, Reverend Tyler and Elder DeBose and all of the team that's here tonight, Dr. Gail Lax and the many folk. We deeply appreciate you. Thank you, Reverend Brown, for your powerful faith reflection to get us going. And Mrs. Irma Gardner Hammond, our hearts are touched and moved by your story. And actually, as you were sharing your story, Priscilla Johnson was on the Facebook thread sharing her story as well. And so we're lifting both of you continually in prayer for healing, for restoration, and praying that the way for you to be able to tell your story is a way for us to find ways to end this violence and to prevent it from happening in our communities. Thank you, Mr. Keelan Henderson, for coming and sharing with us your work at the national level and the work on the ground that you have done. We've studied Stockton and saw what some of the things that are happening out there. And so we appreciate your leadership. Ms. Atwood, I have to say, ditto. Let me start there. I mean, I want to talk about the fact that I have said when I was doing my radio shows in WRD that if we really want to end gun violence today, we needed to start 20 years ago. That the realities of today is about deep disinvestment, disregard, disrespect, dispossession, and disinheritedness of some folk in the city of Philadelphia. You can trace some of the struggles we have with gun violence today back to the redlining that took place in the housing industry back in the 1970s. You can take a look at it in terms of the desire to underfund Philadelphia public schools and not provide resources, in particular were students of color as the district became blacker and browner. We can go back and take a look at other housing policies and how they have had an effect. We have to look at the environmental conditions that have existed in Philadelphia and communities to which they are being addressed and not being addressed. We have to take a look at how the criminal justice system itself operates and actually in many ways perpetuates the continuing hopelessness, or as Cornel West says, nihilism, that continues to permeate the community in the city of Philadelphia. Nihilism is that deep hope of pervasive generational hopelessness. There's a reason that Philadelphia is the poorest big city in America. It's not by accident. It's not because the people aren't smart, but there are systems and structures in place that have perpetuated this. And it's really up to our government to break the back of poverty, which in many ways is driving a great deal of this. Charles Ramsey, the Philadelphia Police Commissioner some years ago, some of you know, was in Chicago, Washington, D.C., and other states, once said, somebody asked him, what's the key to ending gun violence? And he said, a full-time job with benefits. You know, something that's simple, but it can't just be a full-time job with benefits. We need one with a living wage. And to be able to address that so people actually only need to work one job. When there's so much pressure, so much oppression that people are experiencing, COVID crisis has generated so much additional pressure on our people economically and needing the tools and addressing the fact that their kids did not have computers at home and did not have the internet that they needed to be able to access the resources and to be able to figure out how they were going to survive day to day. So much pressure and that sense of hopelessness. Even now, when our civic engagement team is on the street talking to Black and brown folk, talking to even poor white folk about getting out the vote, they're like, why? It doesn't make a difference. It's because people are hopeless. But the Reverend Alvin Herring, who's the National Executive Director of Faith in Action, says something very powerful his mother told him years ago. And he grew up in the South, in the Mid-South, in the heat of Jim Crow. And she said to him one day, she said, give people your hope and they will give you your hope, their hopelessness. If you give people your hope, they will release their hopelessness and so that they can take and live on in your hope. And so we actually want to be a hope-filled organization that's coming along and addressing the systems and structures that are preventing our children and our communities from being able to thrive. So when Power, through our education team in Philadelphia, is working right now to challenge the Philadelphia School District budget because they're removing climate managers out of schools, removing staffing that is necessary in this moment to help support kids as they're returning to schools. We're fighting to make sure that there's more money put in there to make sure there's climate managers, or what they used to refer to as dean of students. There are additional vice principals and additional teachers and resources that are coming into that space, because we know that if people love on children who are coming from spaces and places where they might feel there's a sense of hopelessness, they might get caught up in some idea of what hope is and what the possibilities are for them. When we're fighting right now to end preemption in the state of Pennsylvania so that in Philadelphia, we can actually get a living wage amendment passed that impacts all of our businesses, that increases wages so that people are actually able to live off of one job and not trying to piece 3 and 4 part-time jobs together. We know that that has an impact on the reduction of gun violence. When people can feel safe and secure and economic security, we know that that can be transformational in the midst of their lives. We're working with Councilman Green to pass a public banking bill, which will actually take money from Philadelphia, reinvest it in a public bank so that Philadelphia has resources to be able to draw on, to be able to reinvest in communities in the city of Philadelphia. Even right now, they're challenging. I mean, you know, we've talked years ago about closing libraries and shutting down schools and all these things that are actually community bastions to which our children and our young people need to be able to go to be able to find ways to be sustained. We're continuing to work on issues around climate and around environmental conditions here in the city of Philadelphia. Right now, we're working to support a bill from State Senator Nikhil Saval, which actually will give people money to repair their homes. That would prevent energy shutoffs from PECO and PGW and the water department shutting off utilities in people's homes. You want to talk about a struggle? Try being in the winter with no gas or no electricity or no water coming in your house. We want to talk about changing systems and structures that prevent people from being denied basic human services that are necessary for them to live, including energy, and actually having the money to fix up their homes. One of the beautiful things about Philadelphia is that it's a very old city. And one of the challenging things about Philadelphia, it's a very old city and houses are old and they need a lot of work to be able to maintain them. And so there would be a grant program that would help people to be able to get their houses fixed up, to renew their homes so that they lived in an environment that felt good to them, that they would be able to, you know, take pride again, like my grandmother did, although they were poor when she lived on 1616 South 19th Street in South Philadelphia, but that people would come out every morning and sweep their steps and clean up and pick up all the trash that was laying around in the neighborhood because they took pride in their community. They might not have had much, but they had a sense of dignity and pride in the community that they lived in. They supported one another and encouraged each other along the way. We need to talk about how all these things matter, but we also need to talk about the fact that in this particular moment, when we're dealing with this deep level of hopelessness and challenge, and that one of the things that's really at the core of all of driving people is this notion of unstable government, unstable democracy, and that we need to bring all those pieces back together to get people engaged in participatory democracy, where they're actually having conversations with the mayor, having conversations with members of council, actually making sure that they are heard and finding their voice and power in being able to create change. All of this is a direct impact on gun violence. If people are participating in their community, they're going to protect their community. If people are really desiring change, then they're going to want to step up and get engaged in that. And so we're doing this work. In addition to all the folk that are doing work to end gun violence, I saw folks from Heeding God's Call on here tonight who are working to address the issue of straw purchases that have been impacting Philadelphia and putting guns on the street for a very long period of time. We're seeing our siblings and our partners out there like that are doing the work. But we know that if we are able to address, as Erica Atwood said earlier, the systemic issues that are perpetrated and created incendiary communities across the city of Philadelphia. If we take a look both at the short term and the long-term change that needs to take place, and we commit ourselves to a long-term plan. I appreciate it when you were just honest in saying we might not ever fully get out of this. We can get out of the acute situation we're in right now, but there's some long-term things that we have to do. And some of that is the structural change, the policy change. We have to make this a priority. I appreciate the money that the city is putting in, and they need to triple it, right? They need to make it quintuple it, right? Because that's the kind of way that we need to make this a priority for our communities. And we need to understand that this gun violence is not just about guns and bullets and people shooting people. It's about the fact that some people have been told you don't matter. Your lives are irrelevant, and that we don't want you here. But I'm here to tell you today is that we want you. We see you. We all can grow together and we can be better. and for the ways to which our city, our government, our communities, our institutions have failed young folk and failed members of our community. We've got to fix that and do better. But there's also ways that we can all grow through this. And part of that is for us to participate in creating change in our communities around all these issues. It's not just one issue, it's all these issues that is going to build a brand new Philadelphia. Would you join us in becoming architects of a new Philadelphia? That we got to leave the old behind. We got to be architects of a new city, a new imagination, a new hope. So thank you for letting me come and share tonight, and being able to share some about our campaigns and the work that we're doing here across the city of Philadelphia and beyond. And we look forward to partnering with folks like Erica Atwood and Keelan Henderson and all of our siblings from various programs across this. I know our Live Free team is doing that work, and we so appreciate you, Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler and Elder Melanie DeBose, for your leadership and the work that you're doing with Power Live Free. Thanks for letting me come and share tonight. I appreciate you.
Woo! All right, Bishop. Elder Melanie, as we get ready to close out, what do you think about that?
I think I'm going to go ahead and cash app him. For those of you that didn't get that, in our tradition, in our church tradition, we bless the deliverer of a dynamic message with an offering. That's not most important, but he understands the compliment of it all. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for your time. We're so appreciative of everything. Please feel free to include any questions, comments, or criticisms that you might have in it to point out in the chat. We're going to be asking your presence on our future town hall meetings and conversations, and not just your presence, but your input as well. So again, as we get ready to close out, we thank all of those of you who are participating. We're grateful to all of the coordinators and our different Live Free teams. And we certainly thank Mr. Keelan Henderson, Ms. Erica Atwood, Ms. Irma Gardner. We're so blessed to have had your presence and the sharing with regard to your son. Ms. Teresa from EMIR, please forgive me for forgetting your last name. And then for anyone whose name I didn't call, charge it to my head.
I got it.
To my heart.
I got the list right here. Thank you, Elder Melanie. And yes, that was Miss Vicki Green from EMIR, who again connected us with Miss Irma, and they work together along with all these other incredible families as they unfortunately have to bring new folk in. And I want to also recognize Councilmember Derek Green, who was here as well, watching on Facebook Live. Bishop Royster commented about his initiative on the public bank, and also Arun Prabhakaran from the Urban Affairs Coalition as well, for the work that they are doing in this moment, partnering with the city. And let me just say to our team, to Gail Lax, Dr. Lax, who is, again, the co-chair for Power Live Free, Rabbi Linda Holtzman, who's over our gun violence prevention team. Thank you for everything to help make tonight possible. Reverend Art Brown from the mass incarceration team, and Tanya Regali from the immigration team. And I should recognize Dr. Gale is also over the police accountability team. The next town hall will be April the 27th, same time, same day of the week. We have not chosen which particular theme yet. We're trying to hammer that out soon, but look for us again here on April the 27th. Thank you, Selena, for doing everything on social media, and thank you all for posting and sharing your thoughts. That's all we have for tonight, but we go in the spirit of hope. And thank you for bringing that up, Keelan, because you're right. We can never lose hope. The things that we see in the paper each and every day, or that we hear on the news, can be very, very disheartening and can make you just want to do as others have done, pack up and move away. But everybody doesn't have that opportunity. And so somebody has to stay behind and fight. And we fight in the hope that this will one day be a different type of city, and that we're not bound by the news cycle of the day. Thank you all. God bless you. And let's pray that when we meet again, we'll have better news to share. Take care.